Thank you for joining us for part 2 of the Juneteenth disability video series. The tragic part of Private Louis Martin's story is how much of history is being repeated today. Like the military of yesteryear, the military will not take people with disabilities but has no problem creating disabled people in battle and warfare, then discarding them once they become disabled. Presently, the U.S. military has barred disabled people from enlisting. Still, military service subsequently creates disabilities like PTSD, amputations, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, burns, facial trauma, facial deformities, blindness, hearing loss, and multiple other lifelong medical conditions, even mental illness. Many disabled veterans feel abandoned by the military once their disabled bodies are deemed useless by a country they served and protected. Ableism and racism in the military must end now. The military still discriminates against Black soldiers like they did during the Civil War, including pay disparities similar to how Black Union soldiers were paid less than white Union soldiers. Frederick Douglass even spoke to Abraham Lincoln about it. Though people like to credit President Abraham Lincoln for freeing the slaves, Black people freed themselves with centuries of resistance. They resisted slavery as Union soldiers and white soldiers subjected them to racism and abuse. They resisted slavery through other acts of defiance against their enslavers. Simply because you don't believe slavery should exist does not mean Black people were seen as equal to whites and deserving of the same rights as they did. Many abolitionists didn't believe formerly enslaved Black people should have the right to vote. Though the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Abraham Lincoln in 1861, it's wrongly thought of as the decree that freed enslaved Black people. It didn't, because it only applied to enslaved people in the Confederate States. Slaves in the Union remained in bondage until the 13th Amendment was ratified. Fun fact, Mississippi technically didn't ratify the 13th Amendment until 11 years ago in 2013. Still, myths persist that slavery ended when the Union won the Civil War. So we observe Juneteenth when the Emancipation Proclamation was finally enforced in Texas 2 years after the Civil War ended, in the memory of great veteran Private Louis Martin of Segregated Company E in the 29th United States Colored Military Troops. Remember, no political party or white people freed enslaved people. Black people freed themselves through centuries of resistance, slave revolts, and the thousands of Black people who lost their lives and their limbs in the Civil War or became disabled as a result. Juneteenth bonus facts. From red velvet cupcakes to even a K-pop band naming themselves Red Velvet, the world loves red velvet cake. Did you know the connection between red velvet cake and Juneteenth and Black culture? Celebrations of Juneteenth included food festivals, and the red in red velvet cake symbolized the many years of bloodshed of Black enslaved people who fought hard for emancipation and freedom. When you take your next bite of red velvet cake, remember Juneteenth.